It's time to take command with former NFL tight end Logan Paulsen and former Commanders beat reporter Craig Hoffman.
Take Command podcast from Odyssey Sports. That is Logan Paulsen. I am Craig Hoffman, and it is time to get ready for the Buffalo Bills. Logan, I've heard a rumor that nobody circles the wagons like the Buffalo Bills.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely been my experience or our experience, you know, so should I tell that story now or should I wait till the end?
Well, that's just an old Chris Berman reference from NFL primetime.
Is that what he says all the time? The wagons thing?
Nobody circles the wagons like the Buffalo Bills.
They do have a great fan base. Great fan base up
they
there.
do. But you also, I don't know, Josh Allen's career, you triggered it back into the right direction a couple years ago. So there's that too.
That's like total serendipity. Like it was on this show. It was week 3, kind of same deal. And they looked not good. He specifically didn't look very good. And I remember we were like, yeah, he looks a little unsettled. He's not seeing his throws, not seeing his reads. And then that was the game where it was like 42-14 or whatever. And he looked like he was a MVP candidate. I think he was an MVP candidate for that year. So obviously, like all analysis will be couched with that kind of in mind that, Josh Allen, no matter how bad he looks, can swing it back the other way, no problem. So just keep that in mind as you're listening today.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I was on It's Always Game Day in Buffalo. And by the way, the co-host of It's Always Game Day in Buffalo, Sal Capaccio, will join us later on in this show. But I was on with his co-host, Matt, yesterday. And he's like, Allen has one of these games per year where you're like, what are you doing, man? And he has like 4 or 5 bad throws and they get picked off. And everyone's like, what's wrong with Josh Allen? And then he always bounces right back with something great. And fortunately for the Bills, he got it out of the way in week 1 this year, which is moderately terrifying. So with that, let's dive right in. What do you see when you watch this Bills team on tape through 2 weeks offensively? And then we'll get into what the Commanders can do to try and stop it.
Yeah, obviously, if you watch both games, let's start with the Jets game. The Jets game, I thought the Jets did a really good job of kind of getting after them with a 4-man rush. They got those kind of dynamic pass rushers. Quentin Williams, Huff is another guy. They've got all those draft picks they've invested. And the offensive line for the Bills is fine. They're not like, there's nobody on there that you go like, oh, wow, this guy's amazing. This guy's like, you know what I'm saying? They've got some young players. They've got Spencer Brown, who I really liked coming out of Northern Iowa a couple years ago. He's 6'8", like that 320, but moves like a basketball player. I think he might have been a basketball player at Northern Iowa. But again, still like really raw in terms of how he sets guys. It gives up a lot of pressure. Osiris Torrance is a rookie from Florida. He was their 2nd-round pick. I know a lot of people wanted him to come here. He has actually been consistent, but I just think he's not as like his footwork is not good enough to match up with a more athletic 3 technique like Daron Payne, for example. And Daron would line up to his side. In the game, Quentin Williams lined up to the other side against Connor McGovern, who I actually think is a pretty solid football player. Like he's very consistent, but again, when you're going against Quentin Williams, not great. And then their left tackle is Deion Dawkins, who again is kind of maybe encapsulates the group. And what I mean by that is like he is. Some plays you're like, wow, that dude's amazing, and then there are times you're like, that dude's terrible. And so I think like that's kind of how their offensive line is. They're a good group, but they have high highs and they have low lows. And I think the Jets defense was able to exploit that. And the Jets, I thought, did a good job of kind of matching in between like really aggressive coverage structures. So like match coverages, zone match coverages, and then playing really, really soft coverages. And those soft coverages I felt like were really unsettling to him. I feel like there's a good sequence in the Las Vegas game where you kind of look at his big time throws, for example. And in the red zone, or Las Vegas, excuse me, they bring a pressure. The right tackle, Spencer Brown, gets beat. He steps up violently. He makes the linebacker miss and throws this absolute dart on a dig to the crosser. I think it was Dalton Knox, their tight end. And it was just like amazing. Then to kind of like marry that, the next sequence in terms of big plays for him is the same thing. It's a 4-man rush, and this is against New York Jets. It's a 4-man rush, and they play a soft coverage structure. And he does the same thing. He steps up, and he looks up to make this throw, but it's zone, right? So, like, there's no immediate answer for him to make the throw. And so he forces the ball into coverage, and I believe it's picked off. So that's kind of what I see from that group, right? Is like when he is so Josh Allen is so like he's a guy who really is just like out there playing ball. You know what I mean? Like when you watch him, he's just out there letting it rip. He's not on time. He's not in rhythm. He is occasionally, but most of the time he's like, let's just make a play.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, watching the Vegas game back, it is pretty interesting to me because I feel like there is a lot of on rhythm stuff in that game, and he was awesome.
He was great in that game.
I mean, you look at like I was looking at the chart just a minute ago of the pressure and depth chart. You know what I'm talking about on PFF.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And like, so it's just like it breaks the field into 1, 2, 3, 4, 12 components, like behind the line of scrimmage, 0 to 10 yards, 10 to 20 yards, 20 plus, and then outside left between the numbers, outside right. And it's just like 3 for 3, 4 for 4, 7 for 8, 7 for 7, 1 for 1, 2 for 2. Like there's like no incompletions.
He's got the highest completion percentage in the NFL over 2 weeks. Like, don't get it twisted. Like, he's excellent. But what I mean by timing and rhythm, to your point, is like he gets to his drop and he's waiting to throw the football because his arm is an absolute laser beam. So he can wait a second and then he can throw an absolute fireball in there and be a little bit off rhythm. Go ahead.
But I think the difference though, like people hear that and they assume he's just like sitting back there bouncing up and down like Sam does sometimes. It's not like that.
Not like that.
Like he might be a little off rhythm, but he makes up the timing with the arm strength.
Yeah.
But the ball gets out. And like that was the thing in the Vegas game when they went on that run where they
you have his time to throw on there? Is his time to throw on there?
I can look it up in a second.
Yeah.
I have to go to the next gen stats, but I can look that up in a second, or William can look that up and throw it in the chat for us. But he gets the top of his drop and it's business time. Like when he gets the top of his drop, sure, he might wait a half tick extra, but if it's not there down the field, he will check it down. Like he will throw the ball to the underneath stuff. And so it's going to be really important for Barton and for Davis and for Cam Curl and whoever else winds up, if one of the corners or, Derek Force drops down as an underneath defender to rally to the football, because he will check it down quickly or he'll take off and run. So like you've got to, if they're going to play a lot of soft shell zone type of stuff, like, yeah, your eyes are on the quarterback, but you got to be ready to react. And you also have to stay super disciplined, because if he starts to take off, you can't just go chase him, because he can throw the ball. It feels like he could, be running to his right and throw the ball back to the left sideline underhanded and still have it go 80 miles an hour because his arm is that strong. So he will get the ball out relatively quick. Like he will get the ball out what feels like quickly, even if it's not necessarily on rhythm. And then depending on the game situation, yeah, he will bounce, a little bit. But, I guess, well, William just got the goal line stat. Red zone, different story, because you're trying to make a play down there. There's no real checking down as much in the red zone. It holds it on average for 3.1 seconds before throwing. But in the field of play last week, like I felt like the ball came out very quickly.
Yeah, and also, I mean, so like not to like, again, like, so one of the things about last week is I felt like they were really like, hey man, like let's give you some easy opportunities here. You know what I mean? Like let's kind of limit some of your downfield opportunities. And that's what they did. Like early, I think they go 3 and out, and it's like on 3rd and 10, because they have 2 runs to start the drive, that he just checks the ball down for like a 5-yard gain, right? Then the next series, they get the ball out on the 30-yard line, really advantageous field position. And it's like, it's run, little swing pass. And then again, even in this sequence, the right tackle loses to Max Crosby. Again, a lot of guys going to lose to Max Crosby. He steps up violently and then gets in there and throws a shallow cross to the tight end. And then they end up in 4th down. They convert on a sneak. Next play is a run for a touchdown. So again, I felt like they were really trying to limit what they do. But in terms of when I'm watching, he is not, like, it's not fast. The process is not fast. Like he's trying to go like get open at the mailbox and let's make a play. And he's good at it. I think that's what makes him special. Like William just got it for us. Time to throw is 2.84, which is crazy high. You want to be in that 2.5 range. And I think Sam's probably right around there too, if I were to guess. So very long time to throw, but he's good at it because he's big and he's physical and he can do these crazy things with his arms. Like even on the play that I described when we first started the segment, where he's stepping up hard to his left, opening his shoulders like to the left and then throwing back to his right. Like, and there's just not a lot of people on this planet who can do that. Like he is, like in the red zone, same game against Las Vegas. He's sprinting hard to his right. There's nobody there. He delivers across his body, like over his left shoulder. He's running to the right, over his left shoulder, an absolute dart in between like 5 defenders. So he does have this, like, it's like risk reward is not there for him. It's like I'm going for it all the time, and I think they're trying to manage that. Like when you watch that Vegas game, they're definitely trying to manage who he is and what he does, and I think like that's that's kind of like what you get from that offense is like it's got this crazy like boom or bust feel to it when you watch, and a lot of it is because he's the quarterback and that's how he plays. And again, they've got some playmakers outside, Stephon Diggs, Gabe Davis. Like those guys are good football players. They got Dalton Kincaid at tight end, who they drafted in the first round to kind of be that move chess piece. I haven't been that impressed with him in terms of like his speed and kind of being that mismatch F guy. And then they got Cooks in the backfield. So they do have like these playmakers that are very fast and dynamic, but it really is like Josh Allen. You know, like if Kirk Cousins was in this offense, it would feel very different. Like Josh is like Patrick Mahomes without the rate limiter on him. You know what I mean? Like without that, like Patrick Mahomes does a good job of like managing risk really well. Like he does crazy stuff, but the risk is managed. Like Josh Allen is like, no, dude, like we are full send. And it's almost every play. And so that's where I was really impressed with the offensive coaching staff. Who's the offensive coordinator? He's the old quarterback. It's Dorsey. Is that it?
Yeah, Ken Dorsey. Yeah.
And he was just like, we are going to have like reins on you for a long time in this game until it's time for you to make a play. And I think that's the best case scenario for Washington, I think also, because you limit like what makes him good. And then when they take the reins off in those third and medium situations, like getting those soft zone structures, rush with a 4-man rush, let him pat that football, and then let him throw you the football. Like, because that's really what I think, like where the double-edged sword is with him, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, definitely. Because there was, like I said, in that stretch where they start get going, he is getting the ball out quickly. Like the reins are on, like you said. And I think what is impressive about Allen is this is a guy that had like a 59, or it was like maybe even lower than that completion percentage in college. And there was real concerns like, can he make those throws?
His first couple of years was terrible.
Yeah,
too.
it was bad. So like, to see him go like, 0 to 10 yards to his right, he's like 7 of 7 last game. It's like, yeah, he wouldn't have gone 7 for 7 earlier in his career. Like when the reins are on, he would still throw the ball into the ground or throw it outside of somebody or throw it over their head. Now he can do that basic stuff. And then he does the special Josh Allen stuff where he's holding it longer and goes on, still with a lot higher, like he's obviously the numbers don't lie. The average, it's like 2.89, I think is where PFF has it. The stat that William pulled from has 2.84, per attempt. It's like 2.77. Yeah. So like, per actual throw attempt, it's 2.77. So that even takes out, I guess, the sacks or like when he scrambles or whatever, not just per drop back. And still that's pretty high. It's also pretty much exactly where Sam is. But he very clearly is doing that for a long time. And also when he holds it, like he holds it for a long time to pull that number up, because there are these plays where it's like boom out, boom out, boom out.
But so to that point, though, it's like
I was gonna say it stresses your defense everywhere, right? It's like, oh, is he gonna check it down? Okay, we got to be able to rally and tackle. He's a running threat, but also we've got to stay back and we've got to stay disciplined in scramble situations, because he can literally touch with his arm or his legs every blade of grass, and that is super stressful. The most stressful thing, arguably, for a defense.
Yeah, and I think, like to your point is like, I kind of want him to be in that situation where he's trying to extend the play, because I feel like it again, like that hurts you because that's where he finds big plays, but also
where he turns it over.
That's where he's made some bad decisions, especially the first 2 weeks. Like obviously, like he goes through these spells where he makes bad decisions and then makes good decisions, and that's kind of been his MO his whole career. But like I look at him and especially against the Jets, like he's running out to his left and he has probably 20 yards of green grass in front of him. He looks downfield. There's a post in cover 2, and he's trying to throw the post versus cover 2, like running away back to his right to the middle of the field. Now that ball is launched out there, but there's 3 dudes standing right there for the Jets, and they make a pick. So like for whatever reason, he's got like this. I heard someone on PFF describe it as like he's got this inability to kind of like check himself, and it shows up. Like even in the red zone against Las Vegas, that touchdown that he threw when he's running to his right, throwing back to his left.
Dude, that is ridiculous.
He should not throw that ball though. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Like the one, it's like he's trying to be Patrick Mahomes, and instead of like, with Patrick Mahomes, everyone steps up and he just lobs it right over, the guy's wide open. It's like he's throwing a dart between like into the teeth of that Las Vegas defense. Yeah. And like that is so close to being tipped and then like intercepted. You know, like it's just so close. Man, that's what he brings though. He brings these incredible plays that like not even Patrick Mahomes can participate in because like of his talent, his athleticism, but it's also like he doesn't regulate himself, you know? And so like you get this really long time to throw. You get like some of these like off-schedule plays that are amazing, but with those amazing plays, you get some of these kind of insane plays, like these ill-advised throws. And I think that's where Washington's defense has to capitalize, if I was going to say, right? They have to be able to say, they have to unsettle him the way the Jets did. Four-man rush, pressure, man looks, zone looks. The zone looks were awesome, and this team does a good job in zone, and they do a good job in match, but get him unsettled enough so that he doesn't know exactly what he's looking at. He's not like when you play, who's an example? Like Tom Brady, for example. It's hard to disguise what you're doing. Here, I feel like you can do it a little bit better. I feel like he's a very smart guy, Josh Allen, but I feel like you can get him a little. He can get got with some different defensive looks, and if you can get him to throw you the football, I think you're going to be in a really good spot. So
yeah. So the turnover
turnover battle.
Piece,
Let's win that.
Yeah. Hey, you got to win the turnover battle. But the way you do it is like you have to take advantage of the opportunities presented. You will get advantages.
Yes.
And like in this game, like we always joke about the NBA is a make or miss league. Like sometimes you get good shots in terms of shot quality, and sometimes they go in and sometimes they don't. Sure. And that's, the good teams make shots more often. The good defenses, when the ball is thrown to them, catch it. The bad ones are on the receiving end of the announcer going, and that's why that guy plays defense.
Right.
And so like at the end of the day, it's not like there's the schematic of like, can you fool him? Can you get his own blitz and someone dropping off, or can you show a certain, a cover 2 shell and then rotate into cover 3 and he throws you one because he thinks it's 2. Like there's all that schematic stuff that Del Rio's got to figure out. But at the end of the day, like when that stuff happens, do you catch the football?
Sure.
That is going to be the difference in winning and losing the turnover battle this week on the creation side of it. And so, yeah, that's my analysis. Win the turnover battle. How? Catch the football.
But also, like, to even simplify that even more, one of the things that sticks out to me is like, I feel like, you remember this was like 2001 when everyone started playing like Tampa 2 to the Kansas City Chiefs, and Mahomes was getting really frustrated and throwing more picks than normal, right? Does that make sense? Like,
yeah.
I feel like teams are kind of doing that to Josh a little bit. You know what I mean? They're kind of playing these softer coverage structures, and Josh does not have the patience to be like, oh, it's not there. Let me run. Let me check the ball down. He's like, I'm going to try and throw it over the top of this like crazy quarter zone coverage, So I think it's even simpler than that. It's like you have to catch a football, obviously, but it's like get at these more conservative zone structures. Let your 4-man rush eat. And make him be patient.
Which, by the way, is conducive to success for Washington based off what we saw last week, where the busts happen when they start to get a little more complicated. And it's like, just be simple and play it well and see if he'll do something dumb. Like sometimes that's the way to do it is like, it's cover 4. You see it. Okay. You want to try to beat it with your arm? Go ahead.
Go for it. Yeah. And
old Manny Forbes back there running around.
Yeah. And so I think, like, if I was going to say, obviously you need to mix it. You can't just do one thing.
Sure. Right.
But mix it up. But I think like those softer zone structures, especially with guys like Cam back there, Forrest back there, you mentioned Forbes already and Fuller, like use those skill sets, man. Like get back in those softer structures and make him be patient. Let that 4-man rush eat. Now, I think the other thing is, I think Buffalo knows that. They obviously showed that they know that, because when you watch the Las Vegas game, they're like hyper aware of like, we're not going to give him an opportunity to do this until we feel like he's settled into the game a little bit. So like, can you force them into those opportunities early by being good on first and second down? I think would be the other thing. And I thought Las Vegas in the first half did a pretty darn good job of that. And then in the second half, obviously gets away from him a little bit. But.
Yeah. All right. Last thing real quick on this matchup before we flip the field. They've got to finish on the pass rush as well, because he is a guy that will break tackles in the pocket, and bringing him down as a bore. And there's also got to be, you talk about Chase Young's discipline as a rusher, and obviously everyone else as well. Like, this is a big week for that. What do you see from him in terms of his mobility and his likelihood to get out of the pocket, and how Washington can combat that?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. Because what I talked about is I feel like you said you saw a guy who's on time, and I feel like I see a guy who's a little bit antsy with with his feet and ready to move and extend. I guess is what I'm saying. Like he's
Yeah.
like ready to do that, if that makes sense. So
Yeah. Well, because like sometimes it just I guess the way I would describe it is I feel like he has a pretty good internal clock. Like
see,
he
sometimes I'm like I'm not even like at
it,
least through the first two games, especially against the Jets. Now it's different versus Vegas, whatever. But
right.
sometimes I feel like he's so ready to like go that he's not
Right.
seeing what's there.
Yeah,
he's
no,
you know what I'm
that's
saying?
a good way to describe it. I think you've captured what I'm trying to say far better, which is like sometimes it's like the ball is out now, ball is out
Yeah,
now, ball is out
right.
now, and then sometimes it's like I gotta run now, I gotta run now, and it's like not actually the way you should process it.
Correct. Yeah.
The good news is for him is sometimes that means the ball gets out quickly and a guy can go make a play and it
Right.
works out. Like that is far better than holding the ball back there and patting it forever and letting a rush come get you. But there is that like almost like anxiousness to
Yes,
do
that's a good word.
something
Yes, that's a good word.
quickly. And sometimes like he caught a groove in that Vegas game in the middle of the game and it works out for him. Other times it can lead to whether it's throwing, you just totally miss a defender, you throw a pick, or he runs and he misses something down the field, or it's like, oh God, oh God, oh God. And you just like see him kind of winding himself up in the
Yeah.
pocket because something isn't there.
Yeah, it's weird. Like I think it's his footwork. He's like real like there's times where he's really smooth and he gets back there and he's on rhythm. And then there's a lot of times where it's like choppy, like anxious, almost like Peyton Manning type feet. And you could tell he's getting anxious. That's the word for it. And he wants to do something. He wants to make a play. So so I think so for me, if you get him anxious, he does scramble around and he's very good at it. He's very strong. He's got this arm that can touch anywhere on the field. And I think you got to have excellent rush discipline. You really do. You got to be rushing together because I remember when we played the Bills the first time. This was when it was at 2001. We were doing the show and they up there when
2021.
Yeah,
Okay.
2021. That's what I meant. Sorry.
We definitely weren't doing it in 2001.
Yes,
I was 11 years old.
2021. Chase had a couple rushes where he's getting really high in the rush, and Josh escapes to the right, and then either scrambles for a first down or throws the ball for a touchdown. And like that's what Josh Allen does. So you have to put your big boy pants on as a rusher and be like, we have to do our job this week. Now, I think Jamin showed last week that he can spy pretty much anybody in the NFL with his speed.
That's true.
You can't do that every play, obviously. But
Right.
like, can Jack kind of mix some stuff in here to kind of give him an opportunity to be successful? So that would be my thought with that. And again, like he's a handful. Like he's one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL for a reason. So even we talk about all these kind of deficiencies in his game, but he's an excellent football player. So
yeah, he's awesome, MVP caliber. And by the way, the guys he's got to throw to are pretty darn good too. Stephon Diggs, DMV, he a Terp, stand up. Gabe Davis, like they got weapons. The Dalton duo at tight end, like they got some dudes for sure. Take Command podcast from Odyssey Sports. That is Logan Paulson. I am Craig Hoffman. We're with you 3 times a week, so make sure you're subscribed. If you're like, hey, I'm missing a podcast. By the way, if you're only getting 3, you're missing out too, because we do take 5 on Tuesday and Thursday. So really 5 days a week. And then we're with you on Sundays twice, literally, Logan, and twice on Sundays. Pre-game on the radio and on YouTube, and then the post-game show on YouTube as well. All right, let's get to the Commanders' offense versus this Buffalo defense, and then we'll talk to our guy, Sal Capaccio. This defensive line is far and away the best they have played so far. And then they also, I think the thing that makes this defense really special, Logan, is they might have the best second level in the league. Like Milano is ridiculously really good, and he is a really game-changing type of linebacker at a position where there just aren't that many dudes that are that good in the league.
No, I agree. It's funny. I think the defensive line is maybe again, like this is probably bulletin board material, maybe a little overrated. Like obviously Ed Oliver has been very productive. He was very productive versus the Jets, but a guy that gets quiet, like he goes through like, oh, look at this game, Ed Oliver. He's the 3 technique and then gets a little bit quiet. Obviously very kind of athletically gifted. He's one of these guys who's like 290, 6'1", but super fast and athletic inside. I don't think he's got the hand placement of like an Aaron Donald, for example, but good player, but not like, I don't think he's in that top tier of, I personally think Allen and Payne are both better than him. You know what I mean?
Sure. So, but he's good.
No, I'm not saying he's a bad football player.
Yeah. But he's not at that level.
Correct. Yes. And so and you're right. He's very talented. Maybe the best interior player they've played. They've got Gregory Rousseau from Miami a couple years ago, kind of these 6'7" freak athlete, but never really become that elite pass rusher. Floyd is a guy, former first round pick. I played with him in Chicago. Good player, but he's hurt right now. And I think like that's something I'd say about the front is they brought Von Miller in to kind of spice it up. And he did spice it up, but obviously he's hurt right now. I don't even know if he's on the team anymore.
He's on IR, so he'll be back week 5.
Yeah, so when he was playing, Gregory Rousseau played way better, and Ed Oliver played way better because the everyone's worried about him. Without the gravity of Von Miller, the front, I don't want to say they become average, but they're not as good. Like like with the Commanders front, like when Chase is out, we've got 2 guys who can step in and be very productive because there's 3 other guys. Here, it's like it doesn't feel like those other guys are as good, and it really makes that defensive line less effective. So, yes, this is a very talented, like physically talented group, but the production has not always matched the talent of that group. Does that make sense?
If Floyd, look, if Floyd is out, which he got hurt and it did not practice on Wednesday, like they become a lot closer to what you saw in Denver and Arizona. You have like a couple of, you have Rousseau on the edge who's super talented, but if he's your lead guy and you can ship him and you don't have to worry about anybody else, obviously you have to worry about Oliver a little bit. Like that is a very different front. And my proclamation that they are the best front they've played by far instantly becomes not true. Like when you're missing 25% of what makes you good, and probably, in terms of skill, it's a higher percentage than just one dude, but that's a game changer. Floyd, if he's healthy and is out there, like now you're talking about 2 pretty good edge players and a good 3 technique. And that it does separate you from Denver and Arizona, albeit it's separating you from Denver and Arizona.
And to your point, I do think that this still is probably the most talented group because they have Daquan Jones, they have Ed Oliver, and I think that's probably the best interior defensive line duo. I think Gregory Rousseau is a very good player, but I think Randy Gregory, for example, is probably more productive than him. Again, he's very talented, but the production's not always there. If that makes sense for him as a player, so I do think this is a good group, but for whatever reason, the production's not always at the forefront of this group, if that makes sense. For sure.
So, but then again, like as we're talking about, obviously the pass rush, that's encouraging, I think, for the Commanders. But then when you get into the run game, like how do you deal with Milano? That becomes a question because he's just all over the field. He also is a guy that's a pretty good blitzer. He's made a bunch of big plays over the course of his career. So there is that. And then the other thing too, obviously their secondary, Tre'Davious White has been one of the best corners in football for a long time. Hoyer and Hyde have probably been the best safety duo for a long time in the league. Hyde has got questionable next to his name.
Right. Cool.
Yes, but we'll see. But in talking to the Buffalo guys yesterday, those guys have slowed down a step. They're not quite as good as they used to be. They've been at the top of the game for a long time. But the overarching thing that I think is interesting, and we can talk to Sal about this, is under McDermott, they've been a little more pressure happy than they were under Leslie Frazier. Frazier, the longtime defensive coordinator, taking the year off. McDermott, the head coach, calling the plays. And so that does worry me a little bit for Howell, who has had, obviously trouble picking up pressure at times through these first 2 games. It's probably been his biggest bugaboo.
Yeah, I mean, yes. And I think the one thing you feel good about is that Ron knows Sean McDermott really well. Like they are very, very similar. And I think, are they defensively, like that's Ron's defense. So I think like that makes you feel more confident about like maybe if you could get some tendencies or understand his philosophy, like that's inside baseball for an offense and EB and Sam that is so valuable. So you're kind of saying, why, like Ron, why is he blitzing more or why is he doing this more? It's like, oh, he's worried about XYZ, and I'm sure they talk and I'm sure they have a great relationship. But this is where that relationship becomes very advantageous. So you asked a couple of questions there. First off, Matt Milano is an absolute beast. Like he shows up in every facet of the game. He's a great blitzer, interceptions. I think he's leading the team in pick and turnovers for them. Like he's awesome. He fits the runs well, which is something that he didn't do in the past. Like he's just like, sometimes I'll just start the tape and just watch a game and I'm like, who the heck is that guy? And you're like, oh, that's Matt Milano. Like that's like how he jumps off the tape. He's definitely, in my opinion, after watching 2 games, he's the best player on their defense through 2 games. And I agree with the Buffalo assessment that those guys in the back end aren't quite aren't quite what they used to be. You know what I mean? Especially the two safeties. Like, they're good football players, but they're not like these great dynamic football players that they used to be, where they kind of scare you, ball magnets, all that type of stuff. So I definitely think that probably one of the reasons they're bringing more pressure is they can't get home with 4 the way that they used to be able to with Von Miller in the lineup. So they got to bring more pressure. And also, I think they're trying to insulate the back end a little bit more. Like, it just makes sense. Like, that's a good group, not a great group. So you got to, when you don't have an excellent group in the back end, like, think about, I think Seattle's a good example of this. Seattle from 2012.
Right.
They had a great 4-man rush. They had a great back end. They never blitzed because they were good in both areas. When one area is deficient, you got to be a little bit more creative and work to get pressure on. I think also Jonathan Gannon in Philadelphia last year, very low blitz percentage, right? Because he had one of the best D-lines in football, and he's got 2 dudes in the back end, and Bradbury and Slay, who are awesome. I guess that's what I'm saying, is like, this dynamic is not that. They don't have they don't have the consistent ability to create pressure with 4, and the back end can't hold up the way they used to be able to. So you got to get a little more creative.
Yeah, definitely. All right. Anything else in terms of the way Washington's run their offense so far this year that you think matches up well or is scary for them, for EB? Who, by the way, it is different because Frazier's not calling the D anymore, but it's still similar. Like, it's the same defense. It's just being called differently. And EB's got plenty of big game experience against this Buffalo team. Many playoff games, many good regular season games where they put up plenty of points. But anything else specific to this matchup that you want to talk about with Buffalo's defense on the field?
No, not really. I mean, I think defensively versus this offense, it doesn't favor Washington, but the matchup's much more tenable, right? They don't have this kind of trump card in Josh Allen on defense. You say, we got to really account for this guy. Matt Milano's the closest thing, but he's a linebacker, and you can account for that however you want, right? So I think you feel pretty good about Sam going up against this group. It's not perfect. They're a good group, but I think you feel better about the matchup.
Yeah, I am curious to see if EB on the play calling side, if Buffalo starts to really blitz heavy, obviously the screen game was a great neutralizer last week. What's the run pass balance? We'll figure that out. And we'll see, we're recording this Thursday morning. I'm headed to practice here in a little bit and going to ask EB some questions. So perhaps there'll be a little more insight. So listen to the radio show back for that. Cause by the time people hear this, you'll have to listen back in podcast form or use the rewind feature on the free Odyssey app. Cha-ching. All right. Sal Capaccio joins us next here on Take Command. Joining us now, Sal Capaccio, who is the sideline reporter for the Buffalo Bills Radio Network, also hosts on WGR up in Buffalo, fantastic, legendary station up there, and is the host of It's Always Game Day in Buffalo, our sister podcast for the Bills. Sal, welcome to Take Command.
Thanks, guys. Always appreciate talking with people down in Washington. These two teams don't play a ton, but a little more frequent over the last few years.
Yeah, they've actually. I was on with some of your colleagues at WGR yesterday, and they said this Buffalo, Washington is actually Buffalo's most common NFC opponent over the history of the franchises, which is kind of a wacky bit.
Yeah, they've played the Super Bowl 16 times total,
wow.
but really over the last several years, it's been every other year. I mean, that's kind of wild. And I listened to that. You were on with Open the Bulldog in our afternoon show.
Yep.
You did a great job, and it was really a good conversation. And what I find really fascinating is Washington is really kind of in the situation the Bills were in for a long time, where this will be the 10th straight game these two teams play where the Commanders have a different starting quarterback.
Oh, wow.
Well, that's when you got 7 in a row for, seven season openers.
Yes.
That tends to be how that goes. Logan, how many times did you play Buffalo in your career?
I think I played him in the preseason a couple times. I don't think I ever played him in the regular season. So
they missed the Logan Paulson era. That's a loss up there in Buffalo.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about this iteration of it. When you take like your 30,000 foot view of this matchup, like I think a lot of people look at the Bills as one of the league's best. The Commanders, everyone thought they were going to stink. Turns out Commanders come into this game with a better record. Like how do you see these two teams squaring off?
Well, I mean, number one, it starts with the quarterback, right? The Bills have an elite quarterback in Josh Allen. He's one of the best in the league. He didn't have a great opener on Monday night, but that's very few and far between these days for Josh Allen. He bounced back in a big way, was just named AFC Offensive Player of the Week yesterday for his performance week 2 against the Las Vegas Raiders. And, believe it or not, Josh Allen leads the NFL in completion percentage, right? I mean, how many times we heard, oh, this guy's inaccurate, he's got this big arm. That's just not true. But really what it comes down to Josh is basically taking what the defense gives him when not being impatient. And that's what he did. Anyway, it really starts with him. The Bills are one of the best teams in the league. They have been one of the best teams in the league over the last several years. They won 3 straight division titles. They're competing for Super Bowls every year. I like Washington's start. I like a lot of their talent, especially on offense. And of course, the defensive front is absolutely incredible. I'm a Ron Rivera fan. I think Ron Rivera is a very good coach. Sean McDermott comes from him. They coached together for quite a few years. I think this is going to be a tough matchup for the Bills, especially on the road. But at the end of the day, I mean, there's a reason the Bills are 6.5-point favorites. They have the better quarterback and they have the better roster overall.
Yeah, I was going to ask you. So, like, obviously, the quarterback, Josh Allen's a monster. You know what I mean? Like, he's one of the most dynamic athletes at the position. But the thing that gets me is the offensive line that you guys have built there up in Buffalo. I don't know. It's a fine group, but not a great group, not a bad group. And obviously, Washington's defensive line is maybe one of the best in the league. Like, if the quarterback can't throw the football, if he's always under duress, and Josh seems to, when he's under duress, kind of make, some of those bad decisions you alluded to.
Yeah, he can. He did a couple weeks ago against the Jets. What's funny is in those games, the couple of the decisions he made, he actually wasn't even. It was just kind of Josh making bad decisions. In one of them, he rolled left. He had no reason to roll. He had a clean pocket. He just decided to bail out of the pocket. I don't know what happened in that game. It's a tough matchup against the Jets for sure. Look, the offensive line, the Bills did a great job to address their interior over the offseason. That was an issue for them. A little bit too much pressure from the interior, but they went out. Their big free agent signing was Connor McGovern, who's played really well at left guard.
He's played really well. Yep.
And honestly, guys, Osiris Torrance has been amazing as a rookie. His first 2 games in the league. And it's going against Quinnen Williams week 1. And then, of course, helping out on Max Crosby. They don't have the interior, of course, that the Jets or the Commanders have, but he's been fantastic as a right guard just in his rookie year through 2 games. The Bills had to face Max Crosby last week. Now, one guy, not 4 like Washington. And what a great game plan they had for him from offensive line coach Aaron Kromer and offensive coordinator Ken Dorsey. And really, Spencer Brown did a great job. Now, if you're looking for a guy who's been a little inconsistent, it's Spencer Brown at right tackle for the Buffalo Bills. You have to go against Chase Young. And that's obviously a tough task for him. The Bills don't need the greatest offensive line because they have an incredibly mobile quarterback who's going to make plays out of structure all the time. What the Bills need is an offensive line to make sure that Josh Allen can stay clear in front of him so he doesn't have to do that all the time, but also be able to block and open up some holes in the running game. And guys, I mean, James Cook is 5th in the league in rushing after 2 weeks. I think it's been kind of an overlooked stat and overlooked that the Bills have been running the ball very well.
Do you think that will continue this weekend, or do they look at this front and go like, that's not going to go great. We're just going to let Josh cook. Like, obviously there's a lot of high upside there, but you put too much on his plate, you get the interceptions in. Like, there's a risk reward ratio there. How do you think they game plan it up, knowing that this is the best front that they've played?
Well, it's going to look at this offense funnels through Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs, right? That's where it's going to start. Stephon Diggs. He gets 10 targets a game, basically. They're going to try and do that. That's how they're going to, basically move the ball down the field and score points. But they'll try to run the ball on the road for sure. They'll try and run the ball with James Cook. They'll try and keep that defensive front a little bit, on their heels, I guess, and say we can't just fly upfield and go after Josh Allen because we have to respect the run. Sean McDermott at heart is like Ron Rivera. He's a defensive coach. He's a guy that wants to win in the trenches. There's no doubt. Obviously, they use Josh Allen to his best of his ability. They have dialed back in the design runs for Josh a little bit because they're playing the long game and want to make sure that he stays healthy and only use that in critical situations. But I think they'll try to run the ball for sure. And then when they have those opportunities, they'll throw the ball. I'm still in the middle of watching the game against Denver last week. And as you guys know, you watched it, down 21-3. Denver made some big plays and they were able to. And I wonder if the Bills take a few shots if they're able to get those opportunities down the field. But it all starts with blocking that group up front for sure.
Yeah, and you talk about the running game. Obviously, you've got like kind of an interesting collection of running backs there. You've got, James Cook, who's kind of your scat back guy who, again, they get to like kind of unique runs like draws, toss cracks, stuff that isn't like, not downhill like your duos and your powers and your counters. And then you got Latavius Murray, who's been a nice addition for you guys. Can you talk about how they utilize both those guys in different ways and to maximize their skill sets?
Yeah, the Bills truly have it's not a running back by committee, a truly group of complementary running backs, what they have. It's funny. The reason why James Cook is a lot of times considered like a scat back, which what you said, and I don't disagree, people see him that way, is because he's so small. He's the smallest lead back in the NFL. He's 190 pounds.
Oh,
I mean, you're not going to take a big pounding with him. You don't want him running through the tackles a lot. You're going to give him those draws. You're going to give him runs on the edge. He's very good at the mid zone. They love running mid zone with him. Very good there. And what I'm super impressed by is he never changes direction when he gets from lateral to upfield. As he turns that corner, he's shot out of a cannon basically, and he has big runs by doing that. He's averaging 5.7 yards a carry, 5.8 I think already through the first 2 weeks. And then you have Latavius Murray and Damian Harris. Now, part of the reason is, pass blocking. Latavius Murray's been in this league a long time. They trust him to pass block. James Cook's been better at that actually this year, and they can use Harris like that. But Harris is more of your short yardage, red zone back. Latavius Murray's kind of a mix between the two. He's seen everything in this league. They truly like to use the complement. I think last week was the perfect way the Bills want to do it. 17 carries for James Cook, not an abundance. 7 for, I think it was Murray, and 6 for Harris, or the vice versa. But I think that's how they want to play it with this group.
All right. On the other side of the ball, we were just talking at the end of our defensive breakdown about the safety combo. And these guys have been maybe the best in the league for a long time. But it seems like they are not quite at the peak of their powers anymore. If the peak of their powers is a 10, like what's the regression? Are we talking about a 7 now? Or are we just talking about a 9?
I think Bills fans will tell you might be at about a 7 looking at the first couple of games and, a couple missed plays here or there. But I don't think it's quite to that. I think it's probably about an 8, somewhere in there. And the reason I say that too is these guys are still, even if, and at 33 and 32 years old, you're going to lose a step, right? I mean, I think that's going to happen just naturally. Right. Yeah, exactly. Hey, I'm 50. I know what you mean. Listen, that's going to happen. But I think because they're so smart, they're so savvy, they play off each other so well, and the system is designed for them to be able to still play within structure so well and, do the things they do. Even if you have that, you can mitigate it a little bit. And I think that's what's happened here. The other thing is, the Bills didn't have Tre'Davious White for most of last year. He came back finally on Thanksgiving after recovering from the ACL. He's back. Christian Benford, who won a starting job last year while he was out as a 6th-round rookie, he was in and out of the lineup. I think those two guys have played really tremendous football. And I think because of that, that's really helped those safeties as well for whatever, you want to say about them getting older. I think White and Benford have played really well. But the safeties are tremendous football players. We know that. They also signed Taylor Rapp in the offseason. They've been using him for some heavy personnel, for his big nickel, basically, that Sean McDermott has brought here. So they'll use him once in a while, too, to kind of take a little off their plate if the teams are going to go a little bit bigger and they can play around with a little bit here and there in Sean McDermott's scheme. And, of course, McDermott now calling the plays and not Leslie Frazier.
Yeah, so another thing of that defense, obviously the secondary is one thing. It carried the team for a long time, but you guys, or the Bills, have done a lot of investment in the defensive line, a lot of first-round, second-round picks there. What's that group been playing like? And I because I always feel like every year, at least the national narrative is that they're underperforming expectation. How have they been through the first 2 games of the season?
Yeah, I think when you put that many resources in, Logan, all of these first-round picks, that's many resources, high picks, things like that, you expect a little bit more return of investment as far as numbers, as far as sacks, right? Which is what the Bills have done is they've always had a really good group. They've had a good group. These guys can play, but they haven't had that one guy that you have to game plan for, right? And like a Max Crosby last week, maybe like a Chase Young now. That's why they went and got Von Miller. That's why they got him. They needed that one guy, and then Von Miller gets hurt. So now they're trying to bridge the gap. But look, they went and signed Leonard Floyd. Leonard Floyd has the 4th most sacks in the league over the last 3 years. So he's
great.
But he's dealing with an ankle injury. So we'll see where that goes. He missed practice yesterday. I don't know if he's going to practice today. He says he's going to play. I think it's a little bit of a re-aggravation, so we'll see. Greg Rousseau, I think, has made a really big jump. He had 8 sacks last year. He's a freak. He's super long. They'll move him inside sometimes to get a little bit interior rush. And I think Ed Oliver has played the best football of his career, maybe over the first 2 games as an interior defensive lineman. This is a penetrating one-gap defense. That's what it is. They're going to just go one gap, get up the field, and try to make your life miserable. And, if you can force them, force them to play a little bit differently and not be able to do that. I mean, that's where you can have success. But once they're starting to do that and pin their ears back, they can be really good. And I think even guys like AJ Epinesa, who make a play here or there, can really help. Another high draft pick. But this is all about getting to the bridge to get Von Miller back. And I think they've done a good job of that so far, for sure. Unfortunately, Aaron Rodgers, goes out because of a sack from Leonard Floyd. And you guys saw that. That's what happened. But no, they really like this group. But it's more about the collection of guys they have than that true one guy that you have to be aware of every single play.
Sure.
Yeah. What has been the difference through your eyes of McDermott versus Frazier as the defensive play caller?
So they'll use a little big nickel a little bit more this year. Now, they've done that in the past. McDermott did that in Carolina with Ron Rivera. But the difference is, instead of always using a safety like they did Taylor Rapp, so what happens is they play the Jets week 1. When the Jets went heavy, it was really like 3 tight ends, an extra tight end. So Taylor Rapp will come in as an extra safety. Against the Raiders, they do it with a fullback. They put Jakob Johnston on the field. So now they took off Taron Johnson, who's a tremendous nickel cornerback and very physical. He's just not that big. And they put an extra linebacker on the field with Tyrell Dodson. So I think they're playing the matchup game a little bit more here with Sean McDermott. They are blitzing a little bit. They're never a blitz happy team. You know,
Right.
the ideal situation is get home with 4. But look, guys, after they lost Von Miller last year, they couldn't do that. Like you just pointed out, they blitzed more and they were successful blitzing. The problem is they had to blitz. They had to put guys, you know, rushing the passer, which takes out guys out of coverage. That's not what Sean McDermott wants to do, but they'll find ways to blitz. They'll blitz from all different levels. They have, I think, to me, the best nickel corner in the league in Taron Johnson. He can do a lot of different things. He can cover, he can blitz. He's a tremendous tackler. He's not the biggest guy in the world, but they'll use him in a lot of different ways like that. They'll disguise coverages. Even though it's McDermott, the new play caller, it's 7 years straight now of this system. These guys know the system. Everybody who's been in here. So that's the one thing. I would suspect this week, a quarterback like Sam Howell, who hasn't seen everything in this league yet, I think the Bills are going to try and disguise a lot of things to try and say, look, you haven't seen this. We're going to trick him and fool him into thinking what he's seen isn't truly what we're going to give him.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about Matt Milano. Like, what's your take on him through the first 2 games? Like, watching the film is so much fun, but yeah, what's your take on covering him? Yeah.
He's amazing. Listen, and well, on covering him, I'll say he is a man of very few words. He doesn't speak a lot. Yes. We don't really talk to him in the media because you're not going to get much from him. But when you talk to him, he's a nice guy. He's also, I don't even know if guys know this, like in his life, he's a minimalist. And I had to learn what a minimalist is. I didn't even know. Basically, this guy, he shows up to the team plane with like one bag. You're like, where's his clothes? Yeah, I mean, in his house, I guess he has like a chair and a bed. I mean, that's what he has, a fridge maybe. That's about it. The guy is a minimalist. You know what he's about? He's about football and fishing in the offseason. That's what he's about. He's a tremendous player. His instincts are incredible. You think about his path. He was a safety basically at BC. Safety, linebacker, tweener. Comes in the league as a 5th-round draft pick, wins a starting job out of training, out of like halfway through his rookie year, wins a starting job, has never looked back. He's played at a Pro Bowl, even all-pro level, really for 6 years. Finally, last year, gets recognition from his peers, first team all-pro. And I think he's playing better than that through the first 2 games. The play he made for the interception on Josh Jacobs last week,
Incredible.
unbelievable. And after the game, people said he mossed him. Dawson Knox said, no, he Milano'd him. That's what he said. Right? The other thing, guys, real quick, you talk about the defense and Milano and those guys. I think it's going to start this week with stopping the run game and saying, okay, yeah, a lot of respect for the receivers. I'm a big Terry McLaurin fan. Those guys, they're very good. But stop the run game, force Sam Howell and those receivers to beat you. Last week, the Bills held Josh Jacobs to 9 carries, -2 yards. It was unbelievable what they did on him.
That's crazy. All right, so Sal, who you got this weekend? I know you call the games, but we got you as a podcast host here, so we're gonna make you make at least a general prediction.
Look, the general predictions, I think it's gonna be a 1-score game. I think it's a close game. I think the Bills are the better team. I think they're the better quarterback. In the end, either that's gonna be the difference, or maybe a special teams play. I know there's some issues going on with the long snapper there, and I know last week.
Don't get me going, Sal. Do not get me going.
Well, those can be the little differences, as you guys know, in a game here or there, right? And the Bills had one against them, the punt return that won the game for the Jets on Monday Night Football. That could be the difference. But at the end of the day, I think it's a 1-score game. I think the Bills probably win. I actually think the game's also a little more important to the Bills. Now, that's not to diminish what it is in Washington. 2-0, though. The Bills are 1-1, and now the Miami Dolphins are 2-0 and coming to town next week. This is a team. This team has to win this game to make sure they stay right there to be able to play the Dolphins. And it's going to be a great atmosphere. 175 alumni going to be at this game for Washington. Yeah. As I just tweeted this morning, the Bills are looking for any motivation or bulletin board material. They're the homecoming team for the Washington Commanders. So this should be interesting. And I know it's just kind of playing off that. It's going to be a lot of Bills Mafia there too, guys, by the way. Bills Mafia is going to travel real well. It just so happens the Sabres, the hockey team, is opening their preseason on Sunday in Washington as well.
Oh, wow.
Which is kind of interesting. So there's going to be a lot of Buffalo fans on and around the area.
Yeah, but it's Buffalo Washington Day here in here in DC. Buffalo wings for everybody. All right, Sal Capaccio, he is on the call on the sidelines for the Buffalo Bills radio network, 10 a.m. to noon on WGR, which you can listen to on the free Odyssey app. And of course, it's always game day in Buffalo. Fantastic Bills podcast, our sister podcast up there in the Odyssey Sports Network. Sal, this was a pleasure. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Thank you, guys. Can I ask you 2 quick questions real quick? 2 quick questions.
Sure.
Number 1, Deron Payne. Any issue with the ankle? He missed practice yesterday.
Yes, issue unclear of how that will resolve. Feels very similar to Floyd.
Ooh, okay. So it's something to monitor. We are getting tons of different reports on weather. I'm the sideline guy.
Yes.
What's going on with this system? Do you guys have any idea? Or are we just
Bring your poncho, bro.
Yeah,
Bring
I
your
was gonna say
poncho.
bring the rain gear. Hope you don't have
Oh,
to use it.
man.
The latest forecast. We were actually just talking about this before the show, and we said like we should talk about this on the show. So here's your
Yes.
bonus material on the weather. That's sports. Now let's go to the weather. The current forecast is for most of it to hit on Saturday, and for it to peter out overnight into Sunday morning, and it to be dry by the time the game starts. But I don't think that's with the storm hitting directly. If we get direct hit, you could be getting it could be a slug, and I'd be worried about all your electrical equipment on the sideline there Sunday.
I'd be worried about Josh Allen throwing the ball and, people running and Sam Howell throwing the ball. I mean, I like clean football, guys. Let's get after it. Let's have some clean football. That's what I like. So, all right,
no,
I'll bring the poncho. I'll be ready for it.
Yeah, they've been asking Rivera all week, is this a measuring stick game? And it's like, if we're measuring precipitation, that makes it a little hard to measure the football.
I mean, honestly, I would say was going to say it's better than measuring snow. It's actually not. I would rather play in snow than that kind of rain.
I don't know. Logan, you're actually the one who played. Snow or rain.
You know what I mean?
It's easier in snow, though. The ball stays dry. Like everyone thinks, like the ball stays dry. The turf tends to be a little bit better. So offensively, it's way better if it's snow. So
Eric Wood says the same thing. Eric Wood says the same thing. He's our color analyst. Eric, and he says, he goes, it's actually like the ball. If they do their job, the referees, like you don't really have an issue when it's like that.
Yeah. But if it's monsooning, good luck. So
yeah, it's just super cold, and I imagine catching a cold rock from Josh Allen isn't super fun. All right, that's Sal Capaccio with the sports and the weather on Take Command. Thanks for watching this clip of Take Command. First, why don't you like it? It lets other people know that it was good, and then they should watch it too. And Logan, we have a new exclusive home for full episodes.
We do. 1067 The Fans YouTube page. Go check it out and please subscribe.
Yeah, do what Logan said.
Do it.
Very, very smart.